You know, when you look at the whole epic saga of China's three kingdoms, there are just tons of amazing stories. But there's one that stands out as, well, almost too wild to be true. It's the story of a barbarian king who was so incredibly stubborn, he had to be beaten 7 separate times. So yeah, let's dive into one of the most famous legends from that era.
And this is the number to remember. 7. That's how many times the legendary strategist Zhuge Liang supposedly captured his southern rival, this Nan-man king, Meng Huo. And, get this, it's also how many times he just let him go, all to prove that he could not only defeat Meng Huo's body, but also win over his heart.
And Meng Huo wasn't fighting alone, not by a long shot. In the famous novel Romance of the Three Kingdoms, his army is something straight out of a fantasy movie. I mean, you've got his wife, Lady Zhurong, who's a fierce warrior in her own right. You've got shamans leading tigers and snakes into battle. There's a king whose soldiers wear armor made of rattan that's supposedly immune to swords. And oh yeah, giant armies of elephants. It is an absolutely epic showdown.
It's an incredible story, right? It's one that has defined these characters for hundreds of years. But here's the big question we're really going to dig into. How much of this amazing saga actually happened? You know, where does the history stop and the story begin?
Okay, so you'd think a story this huge, this sprawling, would have to be based on, I don't know, chapters and chapters of historical documents. Well, the truth is, a lot smaller, like shockingly smaller.
Seriously, brace yourselves for this, because the entire foundation for the animal armies, the 7 epic battles, the warrior wife, all of it comes from just one sentence, one line written down more than 100 years after any of this was supposed to have happened.
And there it is. That's the line. From a historical text called the Shangyang Ji. That's it. That's the entire historical basis for one of the most famous and beloved stories from the Three Kingdoms. From this one little sentence, a gigantic legend was born.
So if pretty much everything we think we know about this comes from the novel, then who was the real Meng Huo, the historical guy? Well, let's break this legend down and put the man and the myth right next to each other.
Now this is where it gets really interesting. Look at the differences here. The novel makes him out to be this king of the Nan-man, the main bad guy, the big boss. But historically, he was more like a regional magnate, a very influential local leader. His allies weren't shamans and animal armies, but other local Han Chinese administrators. And maybe the biggest shocker of all? He wasn't even the guy who started the rebellion. That was actually a man named Young Kai.
And this chart really just lays it all out perfectly. The main guy, the instigator, was Young Kai. He was a local official who decided to switch sides. Meng Huo's real job, and it was a critical one, was to use his influence. See, he was trusted by both the local Han and the non-Han tribal peoples, so his role was to bring those tribal forces into the rebellion. He wasn't the kingpin, he was the key influencer who got everyone on board.
Okay, so what about that original 7 captures line? For a really long time, everyone just accepted it as fact, and that's largely thanks to a super famous historian from the 11th century named Sima Guang. He put the story in his official history, which basically cemented it as fact for centuries. But modern historians, they look at it very differently. They argue that the number 7 in classical Chinese was often used symbolically. It just meant many times or completely. I mean, let's be real, the idea of a general literally capturing and releasing the enemy leader 7 times in the middle of a war? It's just not very plausible, is it?
So if the 7 captures probably wasn't a literal play-by-play account of a military campaign, then what was really happening down south? Well, the answer is in Zhuge Liang's actual strategy, which was frankly brilliant and very real.
See, Zhuge Liang was playing chess while everyone else was playing checkers. This strategy is sometimes called heart warfare. The goal wasn't just to conquer the South, it was to pacify it for good. He knew that just killing Meng Huo might turn him into a martyr and spark rebellions for decades. The real plan was so much smarter. Defeat him militarily, show him incredible mercy to win the trust of the local people, and then, this is the masterstroke, give him a job in the government. That way you bind him and his followers to your state through loyalty and, let's be honest, self-interest.
And why go to all this trouble? Because Zhuge Liang had much bigger fish to fry. He was getting ready to launch his famous northern expeditions against his arch-rival, the state of Cao Wei. To do that, he absolutely had to have a secure southern border. He couldn't be fighting a war on 2 fronts. Plus, a peaceful and stable south meant a steady flow of crucial resources. We're talking troops, horses, salt, iron, and, of course, taxes.
all of it was essential for the war machine.
So what really happened to the historical Meng Huo? Well, he wasn't sent back south to rule as a loyal king. Instead, he was brought to the capital city Chengdu and given a pretty high-ranking, though probably ceremonial, government job. He became the assistant to the imperial counselor. This was the final checkmate in Zhuge Liang's grand plan. By bringing the most respected southern leader into the very heart of his government, he pretty much guaranteed the south would stay quiet. And after this appointment, Meng Huo completely vanishes from the historical record.
So, when it's all said and done, we're left with two very different Meng Huos. There's a man who actually lived, and then there's the character from the story, who kinda lives on forever.
And this is the really cool part, I think. The historical Meng Huo was basically a one-hit wonder. His entire importance to history is tied up in this one campaign with Zhuge Liang. But the literary Meng Huo, he's become immortal. He stands for this powerful idea of a proud, stubborn warrior who isn't broken by force, but is won over by respect and grace. He becomes this incredible symbol of loyalty.
And all of this leaves us with one last big thought. Meng Huo's story is the perfect example of how one tiny little seed of historical fact can grow into this massive, powerful legend that lasts for centuries. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? How many other figures from history do we really know through the story and not so much the history itself?